right, may I have a motion to adjourn the closed session?
Oh, you already did that.
We already
back there.
did that.
Oh,
You're back in your regular session. Now you need to adjourn the special board meeting
where's
and
my
convene
agenda?
the regular board meeting.
there we go. So we have returned from closed session. We've reconvened. We have no action to consider, so we need a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Okay.
All those in
Meeting.
favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Now you can begin the next meeting.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wilmette Park District regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners for Monday, October 17th. Doesn't sound like it, does it?
It is.
And it is 7:35. May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Duffy,
Present.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Frazier,
Here.
Commissioner Clark,
Here.
Commissioner Goebel,
Here.
Commissioner Kozlowskis,
Here.
and Commissioner Murdoch is unable to attend in person due to illness. If there's a motion, a second, and the motion passes, we can call and connect them electronically.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, let's get him on the phone. All right, we're going to put you on speakerphone. You're joining the meeting.
Okay, so next item on the agenda would be the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda of the October 17th, 2022 regular board meeting, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, can we take a vote?
Commissioner Duffy,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel,
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved.
Okay. That brings us to communications and correspondence. There are a few items in the packet. Is there anything else anyone at the board wants to note?
The correspondence that I received was reflected in the packet.
Yes. Same with me.
Okay. So that brings us to item number 4, public comment and recognition of visitors. I will just refer everyone to page 2 of the packet, which has our policy for public comment. When you come up to address the board, please identify yourself and limit your speaking to no more than 3 minutes, as indicated on this page. May I see a show of hands who would like to address the board this evening? Okay. We'll start over here.
And I'll just be
And
reminding
Steve will be keeping time for us.
Thank you. Walter Keats. I appreciate being first because then I can fall asleep with my jet lag and won't miss it. I just wanted to reiterate what was in one of the emails I sent out about the parks planning project or whatever it is. Anyway, the comprehensive plan. That it shouldn't be that all of us have to go to the website to find out what's going on. There should be a regular email going out to everybody. Everybody, not just the rest of us, just like the village sends out for the stormwater, et cetera. So,
Thank you. Anyone else on this side of the room? Okay, we'll start from the front over here.
Alan Golden, 2516 Laurel Lane. Just a quick comment. In all the attachments that you sent out in this War and Peace size tome, it looks like nothing's been changed on any of the plans, even though there's been a lot of comment about them. I'd like to bring your attention to D, which is the section that talks about the sailing beach. 2 things. Number 1, the expanded drop-off area. We've mentioned this a dozen times. Nobody drops anything off in front of the shack. That's just not how it's done. So adding more concrete there doesn't do anything. No one drops stuff off there. They drive into the Sailing Beach Road, find the row closest to where their boat is or where they sit, and that's where they drop stuff off. Then they pull on back into the parking lot. So that's completely useless. Second point, if you really want to make improvements with the Sailing Beach Shack, paint it. I don't think it's been painted in my memory. Check the roof, paint it, like I said, paint it. The paint's flaking, peeling, maybe restain the boards around the porch a little bit. They redid the interior last year or the year before to make it more efficient, and I know the kids really like it. And then with the Quonset hut, which is just a little bit to the south, again, paint it. These are inexpensive things that could be done to really brighten the place up for almost no money. Maybe work on the interior of the Quonset hut a little bit. I think the structure's still perfectly sound. Make it a little more efficient. But these are really inexpensive things to do that could be done quickly without a lot of discussion, and it would really make a big difference without knocking it down and building something new. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mary Shea, a Gilson neighbor. I'm here tonight as you consider adding amenities to the plans for Gilson. One commissioner has noted that the consultants planned big at the outset of the process. Since then, we have seen the community speak in favor of less intervention. My daily observations throughout the summer months are that the current picnic shelter has served its function very well. However, I cannot believe the figures suggesting one or more rentals each day for the 90-day summer season. I saw with my own eyes that the shelter was used for occasional larger events, and the many families who came to the park for picnics chose to have their individual gatherings under the shade of trees all over the park. They moved the tables to create their own private space, often far from the grills. You must have noticed this in your own visits. In 2021, a large tent was erected at Lakeview Center, which was not used for picnics as it could have been. It probably was used for the campers, but it wasn't used on the weekends. I would like to suggest that you make a plan after so many years to replace the more than 100 shade trees lost at Gilson, according to the 2009 JJR Lakefront analysis, and abandon the idea of a structure in the picnic area, which would limit the open space we presently enjoy. You have heard the residents who have stated that they want the park to be maintained as natural state as possible. This a la carte amenity does not respect the community's long-standing preference for preservation of natural spaces and the protection of trees. The picnic shelter is not a revenue generator, and no one is asking for another one. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person may approach.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for your service. My name is Tanya Chevalier, and I live at 789 Michigan Avenue. I wanted to express my concern for the Lakota proposed 5-foot sidewalk on the south side of Harbor Drive. Even though very narrow, the creation of this sidewalk would damage and or destroy all plantings along the south side of Harbor Drive, from the park entrance all the way to the overlook. Additionally, the proposed 5-foot sidewalk would crowd against both the Wilmette Harbor Association property and the Coast Guard, which contains an armory and is marked by no trespassing signs. A 5-foot pedestrian lane is not sufficient for a family with a dog, a stroller, a child on a bike, or 2 people walking side by side. All the other new sidewalks in Gilson are wider. There is the Michigan Avenue sidewalk from Lake Avenue to the top of the beach entrance at the middle of the 800 block of Michigan Avenue. It is 10 feet 2 inches. There is the sidewalk from the top of that entrance going downhill into the beach parking lot. It is 12 feet 10 inches. At the bottom of that hill is the sidewalk going to the beach house, which crosses the beach parking lot. It is 7 feet 9 inches. And there is the sidewalk at Overlook Drive. It is 11 feet. These newer sidewalks do acknowledge foot and bicycle traffic into and within the park. But why would the main pedestrian entrance servicing those on the opposite end of the park be so much narrower at only 5 feet. This southern pedestrian entrance into Gilson Park really needs to be wider than that, and is a strong reason to consider the alternative pedestrian path, which has been proposed almost a year ago and has been gaining in popularity by various groups ever since. It would provide a gracious, shady entrance into Gilson Park without taking away from our expansive lawns, and one we could be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board tonight? Okay. Then that concludes public comment for the evening. That takes us to the executive director's report.
Thank you. There's an update in here as to where we stand with our evaluation of park sites for pickleball. We have engaged the village to better understand any and all regulations that would be zoning or special use, and we're waiting for a final document that kind of codifies and memorializes that conversation. We anticipate having that here first half of this week, and we'll be able to include it for our packet for the committee of the whole meeting, where we can then have further discussions on potential locations. Also noted here, Langdon Shoreline Project, Smith Group is anticipating being back at next week's committee of the whole meeting as well to present the ideas that came from the direction the board gave the last time they were here. And then also in your packet, you do have prior concepts from Lakota Group regarding amenities at Gilson Park. And that was outfall of a discussion at the last committee of the whole meeting, at which the board said they wanted to look at these. I did remove some of the options that they had presented back in December, because there's been enough discussion by the board where we know that's not anything anyone's looking to pursue, such as relocating the entrance off of Sheridan Road by the harbor, or a switchback that takes trees out on the bluff at Lake Avenue. So those have been pulled out. I left everything else in, so you had a basis of your conversation moving forward. Lastly, on your agenda, you have a statement of work for website design from On Point Insights LLC for $38,500. This is a project that we budgeted to pursue this year. We budgeted $35,000 for it, so it's right there. We received 9 proposals ranging from $10,000 to $70,000 in total costs. Through a pretty rigorous evaluation process, we've come to a conclusion that this is the group that's going to best serve our community by giving us a website that we're hoping improves information sharing with the community, the registration process for families across the board as they go about their daily lives here with the Park District. So that is everything that's in my written report. I am going to go a little off script and just update everyone about the Project Parks and Play. We are working with our consultants and our in-house marketing team and our external PR firm on the engagement strategy and all the collateral that goes along with that, mailers to every home, signage within our parks, what the interactive social pinpoint website will entail, other ways that people can give us input through at our facilities themselves when they're in our facilities, as well as getting scheduled public input sessions and the communication strategy around all of that. We're hoping sometime next week we will launch 100% of all that and start gathering input and engaging with the community. That concludes my report.
Steve, on the Parks and Play, are the committee members already put out there on the website?
I know it was something we were planning on. You're talking about the advisory panel?
Correct. Since
Yeah,
there was a question about
that
that
was
in the
one of the
packet.
questions we got back when we did the press release. 2 people asked that question. I know we were planning on doing, I can't swear I didn't go and check if it's already happened, but there's no reason why we wouldn't.
But it was already on its way up there, was what I understood from you. So it is something we're not hiding. It was planning to be provided.
For sure.
Questions or discussion for Steve?
No questions, just a comment on the website design project. I think that's terrific. I appreciate the approach that was outlined in the packet, a thoughtful approach, consistent with best practices, and having some professional experience in this area, I thought the proposal looked top-notch, consider all the things you would need plus some extras. And I'm sure the community will be excited about that when the time is right. Thank you.
So then we'll move to the first item under unfinished business, which is the next page in our packet regarding the Gilson additional amenities discussion. Steve, you've already given the preface. Do you want to direct us with any specific line of conversation?
So now that, the board has provided the direction on kind of the roadway configurations, the next question really was asked at the last committee of the whole meeting. What about any and other, these smaller optional amenities as they've been presented in the past as options? And do we want to consider those now, consider them later? And what do we want to say we're no longer going to consider? And what do we want to pursue? And so I don't know if we will have a conversation that brings us to clarity on everything here tonight, but the board wanted to start this conversation, so we wanted to make sure we pulled out the old information, presented it out for everyone to see, and then the discussions don't have to be confined to just these options or these images, but these were the ones that have been discussed in prior meetings.
So is the intent in this meeting to discuss them one by one, or this is the introduction, they're to be discussed in committee? What's the appropriate practice?
It's really, the appropriate practice is, I always think, I don't think you necessarily want to make decisions the first time you're having the discussion. So, but there seemed to be a desire for this conversation to take place sooner than later, so we brought it to this meeting.
Well, I have kind of a question. I mean, are these the only amenities we're going to consider? Is there, because there has been some previously bouncing around some ideas, or do we just want to, are we just focusing on these that are in the packet?
I don't think you have to, but these were the conversations that we've had before by way of the presentations from the consultants. But if there are other things, you all are the board. You set direction for our project.
Okay.
So if there's other things that aren't here that you wish to get input from your fellow board members, by all means.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I guess I might as well start. I'm kind of looking at that, and the first question was like an add-on, potentially new restrooms and new shelter. And I mean, I will acknowledge I'm always pro bathrooms. However, I'm not sure. I always kind of wondered why they put a bathroom here as opposed to like much further south, perhaps closer, because I think it's pointed out this is a very expensive place to put a bathroom, and there is Lakeview Center not very far away that now that we are renovating it and doing new bathrooms, we'll have hopefully signage of 2 floors of bathrooms. So I really don't see that need here. As far as with another shelter, I'm kind of the, if we think about a new shelter, putting it at like the bottom of the bluff, north of the Wallace Bowl, where there's a picnic area, and that closer to the beach house, for a couple of reasons. One, as wonderful as the beach house is, and I really think it's really great, there really isn't any rain coverage over it because the roof is all kind of open, and I feel like it would be nice to have a covered area. So that's one place to have it. Plus, when there was the prior suggestions for Gilson, for work on Gilson, had a shelter, and there were a lot of complaints that it could potentially block the view of the lake. But that area by just north of the Wallace Bowl, where there's picnic areas, it's the bottom of the bluff. You can't block any lake views from that area because it's below. The people on the bluff are looking out over it. So I guess if I do, despite what some of the comments made, I do think can be a need for another picnic shelter, because my own experience is that picnic shelter that's in Gilson is heavily used, but I just don't think, I think the location is better served to the north and by nearer the beach house rather in the rest of the park.
Can I clarify the place you're recommending? Just one more time.
Yeah, yes, so it would be pretty much opposite the beach park. There's an area north of Walls Bowls. When I was there, it used to be a drop-off point for Great Gilson.
If you picture the kind of meandering walkway bike path that goes down the bluff into
Yeah,
the center
it
of the
would be
parking lot,
To the right.
just to the right of it, there is
Okay.
a
Yes, to the
picnic
right of
grove
that.
that's largely in a sandy area.
Yes,
That's
yes,
where it
and
should
that's
be.
where I kind of think that a shelter might be useful there.
Thank you.
So I'm just saying that
What
as,
if, Cecilia, what
Go
if
ahead.
we, just for the interest of efficiency, what if we all interact with this page with these two proposals?
sure.
So we don't lose
Certainly.
track?
Okay,
And
sure.
then maybe we'll take them page
Sure,
by page,
sure.
not excluding or, we're not making decisions.
that
We're
makes
just sharing our
sense.
thoughts.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so that's my comments on there.
Thank you.
I agree. When I first took a look at the shelters, I had a sort of a knee-jerk reaction of, "Oh gosh, no! This is going to prevent us from fixing our roads and our sewers." And then I've been trying to think about it more as a user, going to the tennis courts and the playground alike. I agree with you. I think Lakeview Center is close enough, even with a baby and a Bjorn and a toddler in tow. I can make it to Lakeview Center easily from both of these locations. So I think for sure option C makes no sense. Option B makes a little bit more sense. But I don't find it to be necessary, especially from a programming standpoint. Lakeview Center is right there. I want to utilize that building to its fullest extent. I originally had asked more questions about putting a bathroom further south in the park, and my understanding to get water out there would be nearly impossible. I know that's the spot I always on a walk wish there was a bathroom, so having access to a bathroom there seasonally would be very helpful, because I'm trying to think, the porta-johns that I'm aware of are closer to the tennis courts. They're not further, maybe there's one further down in the corner? Okay. But that's a seasonal amenity that I feel we address the needs of our community very well by. As far as a shelter, I agree that by the beach house is where on a day where suddenly there's a storm call or something that happens where you need to get out of the water, and maybe my tween daughter is there and not able to get picked up right away, it would be nice to have something. I also think our staff is pretty tremendous about directing people to Lakeview Center. So as of now, I am not in favor of pursuing these. I am always interested in hearing more about what our broader community would like. And so I do think that part of the biggest reason I wanted to separate the road plan from amenities was so that people could focus on one thing at a time. And so if it's of interest to our board, I do feel it would be curious to find out what our community would say if we asked about a shelter.
Sure. To carry on, so the shelter or the restroom, I tend to agree with Commissioners Clark and Frazier. The restroom idea nearer to the southern end of the park and nearer to the dog beach area or the tow-in area seems like a logical place. It's also pretty cost prohibitive. It's not impossible, but it is, I recall, more than, I think, $300,000 or plus once the existing conditions are assessed. So, for my purposes and for the community purposes, I think we might suffice with a standard porta-john. And then Lakeview, of course, we hope will have a lot of use, as it's renovated. As far as the shelters go, I don't know that a shelter is beneficial here. I find a lot of people enjoy the park with or without overhead coverage. But what Commissioner Clark introduced is an interesting idea. I think that could be a smart place. I don't think, though, our shelter consideration changes our movement forward on the infrastructure. And whether we choose a shelter now or in coming years, it's always a potential option. So I don't think B or C need to advance, in my opinion.
I agree 100% on the bathrooms. We don't need another bathroom there, as pointed out by my fellow commissioners. I did have a question, though, about the shelter. Didn't we already survey that? Did we get responses on that? Or what? I thought we had asked that question already. Was that part of one of the surveys, or was that just part of one of the public,
I have a similar memory. I think it was public,
like
one of the
people
public
put case-
sessions.
It was definitely where people were able to put the stickers.
So we don't have a
on things.
number.
I don't know if we
Yeah.
included it in one of our electronic surveys, though. I'd have
right.
to go back and look.
All right, so I mean, I don't see an issue with putting a shelter at the base of the bluff, as described by Commissioner Clark. I am interested to hear if we need it, as pointed out by Commissioner Frazier. I think it's a good idea to have it. I think that when my kids were at Great Gilson and at the not the sailing camp, but there's another water camp, that there would be a storm rolling in, and they would be crowded into the Lakeview Center, and some of them would be under the existing shelter, and it was not a comfortable environment for all the kids to be jammed in there while a summer storm rolled through. So to have additional shelter there is, and granted that's just one point that where it could have been handy to have additional space there, but I do think it would be important to hear, a number. Is there a solid demand for it? And as Commissioner Goebel pointed out, I mean, it's something we could add a year down the road or 2 years down the road. So, but I would support it if it came up. How's that?
Yeah, I appreciate having this conversation after we have a little bit more clarity on the roads and infrastructure that we'll be working on. And I do think it's important to kind of keep everything on the table. No, not keep everything on the table. Use this as an opportunity to make sure we're putting into place the right plan for Gilson. It's the right time, as we have really paused, to consider that. While, hopefully not creating any new, well, let me pause with that. One side note, something that we haven't talked about, we're talking about these as amenities. I think it would be helpful, and forgive me because I came into this process later than some of you. Has staff made any recommendations? And by recommendations, I mean not about amenities, but about essential additional changes to the park. By essential, I mean in terms of infrastructure on the sailing beach or the hut. Has staff taken a look to say whether more than painting or more repairs? And has staff sort of evaluated and recommended? And then also for the boardwalk, we know that our temperatures are rising, our water levels are changing, less consistent with historic levels. Have we done anything to analyze sort of the boardwalk or how that impacts the structure and the stability of our beach and our bluff? Or is this just something, can you talk to me a little bit about the staff kind of behind the scenes, what's gone into, and anything else that they may, or maybe that's just something that you may be able to help advise for a future conversation?
Sure. Staff has not, made any recommendations specific to any infrastructure at the sailing beach. This is, it was a temporary shack 30, 40 years ago at this point that is still in service, and people who are sailors, are very happy. So to say essential, I don't think there is anything there. As far as the boardwalks, that was a concept that came from the consultants. It's one that I don't believe would destabilize any of our beaches. The intent of that is to, it's kind of a ecological benefit, a sustainability sort of initiative for the dune grasses, so that people aren't walking through them and trampling them. While there are some paths and most people follow them, this is a more clear guideline through, and that's the intent of that. And then as far as shelters, yes, staff has spoken to the need for shelters. We've even spoken to the desire to have them in this part of the park, because when you have your aquatics camp, and a storm rolls in, they're as far away from the shelter that you see Great Gilson in. But this past summer, we've actually relocated that camp onto the swimming beach, kind of that border between swimming and sailing. So they're right there. So these locations from even that one example of when you might want shelter no longer is nearly as clear as it once was. So from an operational point of view, moving away from these locations, yes, bathrooms cost prohibitive, agree completely. That it's fine with us. If there is a shelter and a benefit to a shelter, the location Commissioner Clark outlined makes a lot more sense.
Thank you. And then two more questions. One, just sort of about process. I was trying to think of an example that I could use without throwing this out as an idea, but maybe so that it could be as an example. So what about additional ideas or that may come about now that we're talking about this publicly? Like, what about a hose at the dog beach to hose off dogs? I'm not proposing it, but is this the right time to be considering an idea like that? I'm not saying it's even feasible. I'm just saying as an example, or as Cecilia started with the beginning of the conversation, sort of asking, should we be considering additional things, or should we be working off of this smaller list?
I'm not going to tell you what you should or can talk about. This is what has been on slides and in presentations, and that's why I brought it forward. But other ideas, we're absolutely, any ideas should be talked about. Not all ideas will be feasible, to your point.
And then, sorry, last question. I guess one last. So, are we talking about amenities in terms of buildings and infrastructure, or at what point can we talk about trees and landscaping and butterfly habitats and bird? I know. Just curious if that's part of this conversation, if that's something separate, just a process question.
So that is in the RFP we're working on for roadways and sidewalks, is also the landscape design as a part of that team there. So I would view it as different than this conversation. When we get that in place, that's when that input should be provided.
And landscaping could include trees and
Absolutely.
Butterflies and birds.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Are we putting birds in the park? I'm teasing you, I'm sorry.
Peacocks, please. Mike, do you want to share any input?
And then I was having a little bit of trouble hearing, but did you want me to limit my comments to the first page or both
Yes,
pages?
please. The restrooms and the picnic shelters for now.
Great. Okay. So yeah, restrooms. I think we've heard from everyone, and I agree that if we were to do an additional restroom, it would make sense to do it down by the dog beach, much further from existing restrooms. Again, what we've seen in the community playfields is that's very expensive in a conducive building environment. And here, where we have to worry about lift stations and other infrastructure, I think it would be prohibitively expensive. That's why I think the consultants sort of push the bathroom further to the north to this location, and I do see it as largely redundant. And in terms of the cost, I just don't think it would be a good use of community resources. I think we do need to also be sensitive. What we've heard from a lot of folks about less is more, and putting structures, especially in the main part of the park. And so I would not support a restroom. With respect to a shelter, and again, there's been some talk about this. I think looking back at the history with the consultants, they provided this as an example of where one might go. I don't think they were recommending this was the ideal location for a shelter. And I would see this as far from an ideal location for a shelter because, again, I think it's going to be much more visible within the natural landscape. So I don't think it makes any sense to do a shelter there. We've heard from Cecilia and I think from a couple of other folks that about doing some sort of a shelter in an existing picnic area by the Wallace Bowl. I've always thought that made a lot of sense. I still think it makes a lot of sense in terms of community input. I think we've heard community input in terms of how often our picnic shelter is used. There's clearly demand for it. I know that people have trouble booking the existing picnic shelter, especially on weekends and popular times. And I think we should serve the community by providing that amenity. So I would strongly support a picnic shelter over by Gilson, by the pathway down by the parking lot that we've been talking about. But I would really struggle with the shelter any place in the main part of the park where there's another structure in our natural vista.
Thanks, Mike. And just to wrap it up, I agree with everything else that's been said. My notes coming into the meeting echo that. As far as, I agree, the bathroom, I think we previously also discussed that it was cost prohibitive, so we are reaffirming what we've previously discussed. So that's one concept that I think we're saying, we're at least discussing removing from the agenda. Steve, that sounds unanimous. And I recall from a November of 2021 meeting that was when this was discussed again, if that helps to go back and pull those notes. When we discussed the shelter again, I think we also came to this conclusion, in my opinion, that's very obstructive in this location visually, and I am open to putting it by the bluff. I understood from the previous meeting that the staff did feel there was need and demand for that, and that would be beneficial to them, so I'm open to supporting it in that other location. So let's just keep discussing, and if you want to take action, we can come back to that. So let's go down the line. You don't have to go in the same order, but let's just go ahead and take the other two, the sailing beach and then the boardwalk paths. Does anyone want to go first?
I'll jump in. On the sailing beach, I think it makes sense given that, and I know we've talked about potential issues with the easements, with the water plant and future construction. Obviously, we'd have to understand all of that. But it seems to me with the sailing beach, the first thing that we should do is survey that group of people who use the sailing beach. It's a relatively small community. They're the ones who are served by it. I think it makes sense to defer any further conversation about the sailing beach until we do get some input from that particular group of users. With respect to the boardwalks, I've had a conversation offline with Steve, and he indicated that, as he said earlier today, that he thinks that would preserve the dune grasses and would preserve the landscape. I think I'd like to understand that a little bit more. If that's the case, then I could certainly support it. I don't have a real strong feeling either way.
Thanks, Mike. Want to start, Dan?
Sure. I think it's a good idea to survey the sailing beach community. I mean, it's sailors, paddleboarders, the small crafts that are there. It's the winter. It's a simple survey to ask. Maybe that could even be accomplished over the course of the winter, and then have discussions on it again over the course of the next summer or spring. The boardwalks. I have a pretty strong feeling about them, and it's only from experience. And I've brought this up at previous meetings. I'm beating a dead horse with you guys, but if you walk down to Elmwood Dunes and you go through the bluff, the path through the bluff is now 4 feet lower where traffic has been directed than it started 6 years ago, 7 years ago. There used to be a bench at the top of the bluff that was right before you went down the bluff to the beach. That bench had to be removed because the path cutting through the bluff had gotten so low, people were climbing up the bluff, pulling sand away, killing the grass, and then all around the bench, the grass was dying because people were walking, and the sand was being blown away, and so the concrete supports had exposed down 10 inches. Those concrete supports were 4 feet down into that bluff when they were originally poured. So as a group, we asked the village, who takes care of the park there, it's not a park district park, to move that bench to the top up by the butterfly garden, just because we felt we were destroying the dune by adding additional foot traffic across the top to get to that bench. So if you were to walk down there, you could see what foot traffic does to a bluff. It's already reduced its size. If you go out to the dune area at Gilson, you could see what the traffic damage does to the dune grasses and the other flora that's out there. So I strongly support trying to direct how people should traverse the bluff, the dune area with these boardwalks in some manner, because anything that we do would help down there, the destruction that's happening to the dune grasses and the other flora that's down there.
And sorry for jumping ahead with my questions earlier on these, jumped ahead a little bit. Steve, it would be helpful to hear from staff on if they would recommend any changes at the sailing beach, just going back. Sorry. Yes. Can you hear me better now? Okay, just have to lean forward a little bit. as I had mentioned with my question, it would be helpful to hear from staff if they have a recommendation on improvements that might be needed to the sailing area. Second, I think also, as a couple of us have mentioned, it would be helpful to know whether you could gather this information from staff or from, don't want to incur a big expense going to experts, but it would be helpful to understand the impact of the boardwalk on preserving the boardwalk in the areas and our beach, and just the impact of that longer term as we think about preserving that area.
I have one question about the boardwalks, because I think, at least in the past, there's been a path used for garbage pickup for the, I don't remember what the vehicle, small vehicle, and it has gone along the tops of those dunes, and would these boardwalks impede that track?
If we impede driving a gator through dunes that we're talking about protecting, that's not a bad thing.
Okay. Well, but I know, because that's been brought up though before, that the gator goes to the Johns. Okay. Since I started the question, I might as well go in. I am I think I have to be consistent. I have to agree with on the sailing beach that the sailing beach members do need to be surveyed for whether they'd like to see anything, because I seem to recall one of the first responses was that they liked the sailing shack. They liked that rustic feel, and I do have always kind of, but I also want to make sure the staff that have to be in that sailing shack are comfortable and feels that it meets their needs. So I think that's the thing is really we got to see what do sailing beach members need, because for most people they really don't use the sailing beach. It's not as much of a issue as like other parts of the park that are more heavily used by the general public. As far as, well, boardwalks, I guess I'm kind of, it seems to make it seems to make sense, and as long as it's not a problem for trash pickup or anything else, I guess it certainly can make sense to help prevent any further erosion of that. I really don't have strong feelings one way or the other on those, but I hate listening to it. There does seem to be an argument on behalf of it, but I don't have strong feelings like, oh my gosh, we have to have them. I mean, it seems like it would be advantageous, but to do that. Okay.
I'm glad to hear that. I think we all agree that our thought process on whether we add something or remove it should be informed by two things. It should be informed by our staff, and it should be informed by the public. I think we should have that approach to every project that we take. So I agree. I think we should find out what our staff needs, and I believe that the population who uses this should be surveyed to find out more. I've never been a fan of the boardwalks, and Patrick, I absolutely respect hearing what you said on the foot traffic, and I wonder if there's a way to approach that in having natural materials brought in to solve the problem rather than including the boardwalk. I grew up in a beach town. I've seen boardwalks just be poorly maintained. I don't, even in the nicest of places, it seems like after some time they are poorly maintained, and to walk over that, I want to put my feet in the sand, and I think that people will continue to put their feet in the sand regardless of if a boardwalk is there or not. So I would prefer to explore natural means of maintaining the bluffs.
Great, and I'll wrap up our remarks. Looks like the HVAC just turned off, so you can probably hear now. It's always risky to sit in the back row because you can't hear with the air blowing. So I think we've covered the sailing topic pretty well. I definitely agree that we want to get input from the frequent users. I think there's also a staff perspective to weigh in, and while the survey may give us some directional input, we also know that if by chance the operational and user consideration moves toward a new facility, there are ways to make it rustic or welcoming or casual in the way that we've come to love our sailing beach. So, of course, the inputs from the key stakeholders will help us on that. The boardwalks, I think, are very interesting. And I was amazed on Saturday when I spent some time walking along the beach how well the grasses have regrown in recent years since we had a couple of destructive storms maybe in January of 2020. It's come back a lot, and that's nice to see, and I would love to see it continue to. And as for the materials, I would leave that up to the experts. I agree there can be pros and cons to the boardwalks in the way that they're structured, so perhaps we can find a way that allows good access, good growth, and long-term maintenance. So we'll see what that leads us toward. I'm certainly open to it, though. I think it's interesting, and I love the idea that it could be ADA accessible, which usually means it can also be parent-child stroller accessible. So let's see what the next iteration brings, but I'm certainly open to it.
Yeah, and again, we're all pretty much on the same page. What I had noted was I'd like to see an analysis and a needs case from the sailing staff. So I think we've all given the same direction, but perhaps the staff can come up with what they think would be ideal from the operational perspective, and then take that to the sailing community to interact with that concept, and then they can revise and adjust their plans as necessary. And then once that has been vetted kind of through those multiple phases, I think would be appropriate to bring something back to us to go from there. And certainly updating the board along the way as FYI if there are, if there's a significant length of time between their ideal and then going to the community, and then as they adjust, I'd love the updates maybe at committee level. And then on the boardwalks, I also wanted to just note again from the November meeting when we discussed these previously, we were given a little bit of information from the consultants on the beach question. It had said there was some support and generally don't see the need. That was from the community input summary from their initial surveys. And on the boardwalks, they said the boardwalk and seating has mixed reactions, but mostly positive. So just it's already out there, but just to put that in front of us for conversation. I feel kind of the same about mixed, but generally positive. There were two elements, as I understood, of the boardwalk paths. The boardwalks that directly go out was one aspect, but there were also those seating areas created, which were to sit and look. And I think in a previous meeting we discussed it didn't have to be all or nothing. It could be keep the seating areas, but not the boardwalk. Maybe there's one boardwalk, but there's also sand in other places. I agree with you, Allie. I had noted to myself, can you still walk to the beach through the sand if you want to? So I'm, again, open to that. Maybe is more of a, from your operations and maintenance perspective, what's practical and what's reasonable from an execution and a maintenance perspective. So I think is that enough direction on those for you?
Absolutely.
And I would note there were other concepts, to Cecilia's point at the beginning. There was a boardwalk-ish type concept to the dog beach. So we probably want to continue working through, I guess to me the logical way that we're parsing this out is we're going back to the concepts, the add-ons that were presented by Lakota and putting those to bed or moving them forward. And so I think there might be a couple more to pick up in a future conversation.
So can we agree that we don't need to talk about bathrooms anymore?
Yes. Yes.
Agreed.
Do we need to make a vote on that, or is that good enough for you? Steve, do you need a vote on that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Can we bring up some of the things that, as I recall, we talked about, in addition to that boardwalk down there was talk about maybe a change of the fencing down there, or maybe trying to get water down there. Is this something that we want to talk about now, or is this something that you guys want to push to a future meeting and bring up whatever else?
I think we want to push that one to a future meeting.
And certainly we can all go back to the previous reports, and if there's any other amenities, we can shoot Steve a note if we're concerned that they've been dropped. I know you said you did do some analysis, and some were already discussed to be dropped. I don't know for sure if that one was one of them, which is why I brought
It was
up.
not, no. The only two I dropped was relocating entrance by the harbor and the switchback down the face of the bluff behind the maintenance building.
Okay.
And with respect to the dog beach, because it sounds like we'll talk about that down the road, Steve, it might be premature, but
Yes.
you didn't, you rearranged some of the aquatics camps, so there may be an opportunity for some other changes to the dog beach in the future. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. Figure that down the road.
We'll anticipate staff recommendations and then discuss them when we have something concrete.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to move on to new business. So this is the consideration regarding the website design. Let me go back to the right packet. Steve already prefaced it. The proposal is here in our report. Any other board comments or questions?
I got to move before we comment on it.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
I move to approve the scope of work from On Point Insights LLC in the amount of $38,500 for web development services.
Second.
Now we're open
Discussion.
for discussion.
I'm thrilled. I can't wait. It's long overdue. I think I recently was on the website and I was looking for the search box and I didn't know where it had gone. I think it's time. I think our community is called for it. This is a first step of many in addressing communication lapses, and I'm really looking forward to the positive change it will bring.
Valerie says.
Steve, one question. What other, so you're recommending On Point, you explained how you've selected from several vendors. Has On Point worked with other park districts, and did you speak to other references, or?
Yeah, we definitely spoke to references. They have a few park district clients, but not as many. Their portfolio isn't as deep as some of the other competitors. And actually, through our vetting process, through the presentations and through our questions, specifically around ways to communicate out with the public and even more specifically about the registration experience for our end users, our families. The companies that had a lot of background in park districts were very closed-minded on the approach, and this group had a much more corporate, innovative way of interacting with our recreation database, but putting it out in a more e-commerce way for our public to consume. And so that really became a strong suit for them, that they thought a little bit differently and a little bit outside of the conventional park district box.
I'd like to pick up on that a little bit, just because you did note that we had bids that ranged from, I think, about 10,000 to 70,000. And we're obviously not obligated to take the low bid, but I think if we choose not to, we should really articulate what it is about the recommended bidder that makes them worth or worthy of the additional resources. I think you did a good job of that, great job of that just right now. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
You know, really, the thing that helped them stand out from, so we had 9 bids. The low 10,000 was pretty much tossed out right away because it was just woefully inadequate, borderline unprofessional, so there was no need to continue pursuing it. In the end, our final 3 ranged from 22 to 70, and this was the midpoint. And the low bid was the one that had that park district background, and we felt like we were just going to get what everyone else already had, which is largely what we already have. And the other one didn't bring anything new or better to the table than this one, so it was very easy to eliminate them because the extra cost didn't provide the commensurate extra benefit.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
Thank you.
A great question, Mike, and I would just note, this is a very reasonable price for what you were going to ask to do. And I would have expected it to be minimum 40, probably 60. But having reviewed the proposal, I'm very confident that the couple of watchouts I look for are covered. One is responsive design, which means it detects what device you're holding. Super critical, and anyone who left that out would have been a good item to just eliminate them out of hand. I also like the approach that they have to not business as usual, that you're considering not just what a good park district experience could look like, but what you're competing with their last best experience. And I think all of us have either gone to Amazon, Apple, Google. We have an expectation about how a site should work or can work, and most of us are disappointed when it isn't like those. So I think going beyond what is standard for a park district is a pretty good place to start.
For the record, we're not going to be Amazon.
Totally. You're not going to be Amazon or Google.
You told me that earlier today.
No, that was literally our
No,
conversation.
I think that's right, and I think but it can be a very good experience for the users that we have.
Absolutely.
And that's what they are owed, so.
And to that point, Steve, one other question I just wanted to ask you. In your director's report, when you mentioned the website design, you articulated the goals, if you will, that the new website is envisioned to allow for, and there were very easily 5 things there. You talked about functionality, security, the look, the customer registration experience, and then community communication. So then as I looked through their proposal and they identified their scope of work and the specific softwares, the one that didn't seem obvious to me was the communication piece. I know they talked about their interfaces with social media, and those feeds are great, but we also hear frequently from the community about, not having to find hide and seek, or what do we say about seek and you shall find, but direct proactively distribute information. So is that something that was also in their proposal?
We talked with them about working with, not only our in-house marketing team, but also our communication firm that's working with our in-house team about list management and proactive communication, and they felt very confident that they could meet our needs on that.
So it will give you enhanced functionality than we have today.
Yes, we hope so.
Very good.
Any thoughts on maintenance afterwards?
I'm sorry?
Any thoughts on maintenance afterwards? Will the site be updated or maintained by the staff?
Hosted solution where security and uptime and all that is external of us. And
Great. But
fairly
otherwise, they
reasonable.
could add a class. They can make their own copy edits.
Yeah,
all of that can be done in-house.
And that was a big part of the selection process, was the
Yeah.
content management system of one versus the other one. We kind of got it down to 2 finalists, and our marketing team thought one just was very unintuitive and cumbersome, and the other one was very intuitive, and that was the one that we're going with.
That's terrific. Great.
Are we ready to take a vote? Okay. Roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
The work is approved.
Approved. That brings us to the end of new business. The next item is, can I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I'll move to adjourn to closed session for the discussion of the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the Park District, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, as well as the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body in accordance with Sections 2C5 and 2C6 of the Open Meetings Act.
Second.
So at this time, we'll be going into closed session.
Got to do a roll call.
Roll
vote.
call.
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So we're adjourned to closed session.